Come on a journey with a cinephile.
Wake up, sucker. We're thieves and we're bad guys. That's exactly what we are.
We was getting too big for our britches.
What an excellent day for an exorcism.
What have you done to its eyes?
I said, I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains in.
What's your favorite scary movie?
Pretty well, little brother. Pretty well.
Hello and welcome, listeners, to Journey with a Cinephile, a horror movie podcast, where we take a deep dive into the world of horror cinema, from the eerie classics to the latest spine-chilling releases. Join me as I explore the history, themes, and artistry of horror one film at a time. Whether you're a seasoned horror fan or just stepping into the shadows, this journey is for you. So dim the lights, embrace the fear, and let's talk horror. And let's do that on episode 294. I'm your tour guide of David Garrett Jr., recording out of Columbus, Ohio. So on this episode here is going to be my Voyage of the Fives, number 11. And what I'm going to be doing here is I have a film from 1935 that I got to check out. I'll kind of go into a little bit more how I came about getting to see this one, but that is The Dead Speak. Now, this is a Mexican film, so the original title I don't have offhand, but like I said, I'll get into that. And I'm pairing this up with Clown in a Cornfield. This is the most popular horror film that was available according to Letterboxd that I could check out. So I finally got to see that one. This actually makes for an interesting enough double feature here because we are kind of dealing with people dealing with like sins of the past or hiding secrets and stuff, and they get kind of figured out in different ways and explored like that. So then, since we had a Friday the 13th since the last recording and everything like that, I have Jason X. That is going to be my first mini review. And then I have a rewatch of 1985's Confessions of a Serial Killer. I got to check out a screener for a movie at Raindance Film Festival of Deformelody and American Nightmare. And then my Voyage of the Fives rewatch here for 2025 is going to be Butcher's Bluff. And then I have a documentary of scary stories. This is the one about those books that were so popular when I was a kid. And then I also have Horror's Greatest. This is kind of like a documentary, also a TV show over on Shudder. I got to watch the first 2 episodes of that, so that'll be included here. But I don't think there's anything else I need to do here for this intro outside of saying thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy coming on this journey with me. And I have a great offer here that I wanted to go ahead and extend to all you listeners out there for oldglory.com. This is a place where you can get over 300,000 items for music, sports, entertainment, and pop culture fans, featuring officially licensed merch from iconic bands and top sports teams. Discover your perfect fan gear and save with my exclusive discount. And that is going to be Cinephile 1. But here you get a 15% discount off of any product, and this is exclusive for something that I'm doing and for what has been offered to me. And I mean, this has things like artists here, Bob Marley, the Beatles, Grateful Dead, the Rolling Stones, Metallica, and more. We also have sports fans have stuff here for your favorite teams with official gear from the NBA, NFL, NHL, MLB, and NCAA, showcasing your team pride in style. And they even have some stuff here that celebrate, entertainment, TV shows, movies, lifestyle brands, and it means some quirky gifts to fan favorite apparel. There's something for everybody. With free standard shipping and same day order processing, Old Glory delivers fast and reliable service with every purchase. Whether shopping for yourself or looking for a perfect gift, Old Glory is your one-stop shop for iconic, high-quality merch that reflects your love for music and sports as well as like pop culture. And I mean, kind of just running through some of this stuff. This is a family-owned superstore since 1969. They're known for their quality and customer service. You can get exclusive selection of graphic tees, hoodies, hats, and accessories. Represent your favorite sports team with official fan gear. Discover quirky gifts, like I was saying, and fun pop culture apparel. Perfect place to shop for, this type of stuff. And there's a vast selection of entertainment-themed products, including movies and TV shows if you're not necessarily into some of the other things. And enjoy reliable and fast service with Old Glory's commitment to customer satisfaction, the ultimate source for high-quality, licensed fan merchandise for all ages. Like I said, my promo code is going to be Cinephile1, all one word. So if you're kind of interested, go ahead and check out their website here in my show notes, as I'll have I actually have more details down there for you as well.
Pod Nation TV has you beamed up with Out of This World award-winning podcast, found exclusively on Pod Nation TV. Download Pod Nation TV for Roku and Fire TV. Pod Nation TV, Out of This World.
And for my first mini review in celebration of Friday the 13th, I watched Jason X, the next one up in my box set. So this is from 2001, directed by Jason Isaac. This is written by Todd Farmer. And then Victor Miller is also giving credit for the original characters. So then this stars Kane Hodder, Lexa Doing, and Chuck Campbell. This is a cyberpunk, slasher, space sci-fi, supernatural teen horror film, as well as being action thriller. And then this one here is a co-production of Canada and the United States. It is sitting on a 4.5 on IMDb and a 2.2 on Letterboxd, where a synopsis being: Jason Voorhees is cryogenically frozen at the beginning of the 21st century and discovered in the 25th. He, along with a woman who was caught in the process, are taken into space. They get thawed. Jason then stalks and kills the crew during transport. So this one, once again, is Jason Voorhees being portrayed by Kane Hodder. So this is one that I missed in the theater and then caught it when it came to the movie channels. I've seen it a few times, but it's not one that I go back to often. If it's on, I'll put it on, but that's about the extent. I know I picked this up on DVD, which was probably the last time that I saw it. In celebration of Friday the 13th, like I said, this is the next one up on Blu-ray from my box set, and I had actually never watched this one with a critical eye, so that made it another thing that I wanted to do. So what I'm going to start is that this is not a good movie. I do find it fun, though. What is interesting is that this tends to be like a death note for a franchise when you send it to space. Some recovered to have decent movies after, like Leprechaun. Critters would make sense that they go there since they're aliens, but despite what I've said here, I actually have fun with this one while still recognizing its flaws. What I'll give credit to is the technology and why the team went to Earth Prime, because that's kind of a premise here, is that Earth has been polluted so badly that we now have Earth 2. We're using this idea that humans have destroyed the planet and we've colonized the replacement. This team went back to salvage what they could find. That opening is even set in the future as well. They needed to do that to have the technology to put people into cryosleep. Now, there are events here in the movie that, like, where Jason has continued to kill, meaning that, to me, it seems like it ignores Jason Goes to Hell, or would need to take place after Freddy versus Jason. They don't explain it, and you just kind of run with the story that we get here. Rounding back to the technology, I like this nanobot concept. We are seeing the character of Rowan, as she's brought back, and she's also the one who was put into cryosleep with him, and she's portrayed by Doig. Now, that's good to set the stage for what happens later. Other than that, it feels like it borrows from, like, Aliens, where we have, like, engineers, soldiers, teachers, students, whatever, on this, like, transport ship, just so that there are normal jobs that are being, utilized in normal space travel. Now, if you know me, I don't love slasher films. The ones that I do tend to have good characters or kills. Starting with the former, I think we get your generic stock characters. Slight variation since we are doing this in space. Rowan is good as our person from the past who helps our characters to understand what they're up against. Doig works in that role. And then I would also give credit here to Jonathan Potts, who is Professor Lowe. He's this, like, shady, sleazy professor who gets everybody into trouble here. And then we also have some other good characters like Chuck Campbell. There's also Lisa Ryder, Melissa Aid, Dov Tiffenbach, and just the rest of the team that were, like, students and whatnot. They were all fine. The performances, they're distinct enough to create characters, so, like, that's something that I do appreciate there. I'll also give credit here to Peter Mensa. He is good as this, like, leader of the soldiers. I think all of his guys there are also, they work in the roles that they're needed for. Also credit here to David Cronenberg for his cameo, and then another one that I noticed was Boyd Banks. And then Hodder he brings sides to Jason. He's the first guy that I always think of with the movies that I grew up with. And then to the other side of this, which falls under filmmaking. There are solid kills here, but I love the dry ice one and the VR sleeping bag kill. anytime you can do something with practical effects, they look good here. I even like the look of Uber Jason. It's a fun idea to play with here, and it feels very universal, though, where we get introduced to it very late, and then there's not a lot of time for it to do anything, but I also feel like they're kind of limited what they could. There is CGI here that is hit or miss. The nanobots are fine. Not much you can do there, especially at this time. Anything with the spaceships doesn't hold up. It's kind of just wild like how well Alien could do this, way before this movie, and then we kind of reverted just because of using CGI. There's also blood spray and kills that don't either. On the whole, I'm down on that. I also don't think the cinematography and framing help. It isn't bad. It just feels kind of soulless. The soundtrack was fine to help build the atmosphere that was needed. I do kind of miss some of those more iconic theme songs, though. So there isn't much more that I'm going to delve into here in the conclusion, so this one's fine. This is a film where I just kind of shut off my brain and go for the ride. I'm fine with taking this franchise to space. You're trying to do something new at movie 10, and it lined up well with calling it Jason X. The acting is fine. It does feel stock with some generic characters. There are bright spots. There are a couple fun kills that are great. There's also CGI that doesn't hold up as well. I will say that I enjoy my time still, but not one that I come back to often. There are ones that I think just does things better, and they're just better movies in general. Fun still to come back to every now and then. So my rating then for Jason X is going to be a 5.5 out of 10. Then my next mini review is going to be Confessions of a Serial Killer from 1985. This is written and directed by Mark Blair, stars Robert A. Burns, Dennis Hill, and Berkeley Garrett. This is a crime horror thriller film that is from the United States. It is currently sitting on a 5.8 on IMDb and a 3.2 on Letterboxd, with our synopsis here being: after finally being caught, a serial killer reveals the details of the murders of more than 200 women. So this is based on the notorious Henry Lee Lucas, which I'll kind of get into that, but there is obviously, this is a fictional take. But this film I hadn't heard about and was intrigued when I learned about it being from 1985. It was shown at the Nightmares Film Festival to kick off the third day, and I got the chance to see it there on the big screen. I've now given it a second watch as part of my Voyage Through the Fives films here. So what I'm going to go ahead and say is that this obviously is a fictional take, as Henry Lee Lucas only killed like 2 or 3 people from what I remember having learned, as I did watch the documentary that was on Netflix. But this one is kind of interesting because it came out around the same time as Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. That one went more brutal and was more surreal, where this one is more kind of giving, what we're getting is mostly through flashbacks as he's recounting this to Sheriff Will Gaines, portrayed by Garrett, and then Burns plays Daniel Ray Hawkins, who is that person here. So I found this an interesting take on the Lucas crimes. Now, having watched, like I said, Henry, and then, talking to my mother, as well as watching that Netflix doc, from what I gather, the truth is that he didn't kill nearly as many people as he claimed. He did team up with somebody, and he married that guy's sister, and they committed more like minor crimes. For this take, I liked Burns' portrayal of the character. Something interesting is that it feels like he's reciting lines, but normally that would be a negative. It makes this be creepier though how stoic he is in telling the atrocities that he committed. It's such a matter-of-fact thing. Having no emotion makes him more of a monster to me. There's also this angle that he's trying to remember things that he's rehearsed since he's confessing to crimes he didn't commit. His portrayal of the role is well done for what they're going for. And like I said, this is more of a fictional take where he might have actually committed these crimes that he is admitting to. Let's go over the filmmaking. The pacing is interesting since it sets the stage with an opening kill, and then he's captured, so it jumps back and forth. He's confessing, and then we see things play out as he's telling them. I love the fact that they're showing and not telling, and we also have the police push and question for facts. Lucas only really killed a couple people. He liked the notoriety and the rewards for his confessions. He knew regardless he'd never be released, so that's part of it. It could be plausible for somebody like he is to kill, since he was a drifter, and I believe DNA still would have been in its infancy. There's an amateur feel here to the cinematography and framing that adds grittiness and makes it feel eerie with him there. I want to then finish out with this thought that there isn't much in the way of effects. It's more about what he did and less about seeing it. There is some practically stuff done here, so I'll give credit. It made me cringe and feel uncomfortable with the subject matter. It doesn't linger too much on the kills themselves. The blood looks solid. The attacks do as well. I must give credit there. Now, also credit to the direction to make something unsettling by what we aren't seeing and left to the imagination. There is this aspect here where I wanted to include before moving too far away, is that there's an interesting angle that the police are providing rewards to Daniel for confessing. It creates an issue that he admits to things he didn't do. This also brought notoriety, as I said. Things Daniel says seem to be coming from a benevolent reasoning, but he's a monster. There's also this idea the police are doing things to reward a person like this, as it presents an interesting moral quandary. I then want to circle back to the acting performances. I've already said that I thought that Burns worked in his role. I feel bad for the backstory that is established for the character as to why he kills, and I thought he did that portrayal very well. There is truth here that his mother did, and the lasting effect. Humanizing a serial killer, though, gives an odd feeling to the work. Hill was fine as the unintelligent accomplice, and this would be Dennis Hill playing Moon Luton, and then his sister here is Molly, portrayed by Sydney Brammer. Now, she's interesting because she's much rougher in this version. There's a theme here that nurture can affect people and develop them into monsters that they become. Garrett was fine as the sheriff. Thought the rest of the cast were also for what was needed as well. Credit the acting for the victims and to show how the fear of a situation slowly build. That was well done. In conclusion, I do think this is an interesting version of the story of Henry Lee Lucas. Now, this is a fictional take. What he did was deplorable, but they humanize him as well. There's a dilemma here of giving rewards for him to confess. How far should the law go, and how much of the truth is being told? The acting isn't great, but I think it works for what they needed. Burns also and the rest of the cast kind of push the events to where they end up. Credit to the acting performances of the victims. They show fear especially well. This is made well enough. It is a slower version that leaves more to the imagination. There's a gritty feeling, almost like they're with them. It's limited in the effects, but the practical approach was good. This makes for an intriguing companion piece to Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. It is less graphic, but still a heavy film to watch. I'd recommend this if you want a closer look at a real-life monster. So my rating here, then, for Confessions of a Serial Killer is going to be a 7 out of 10. Then up next, I got to check out here from Rain Dance Film Festival of Deformelody and American Nightmare. This is written, directed, and starring Joshua Rivera. It also features Sean Weiss and Carolyn Mitchell. This is a drama horror film from the United States. Now, there is not enough ratings yet to do an average on IMDb, and same thing over on Letterboxd. It looks like we're hovering about... There's been 3 people who have rated on it. I'm one of them, and we have 2 people giving it a 5-star and 1 at another rating, and I'll kind of just leave things there for a minute. But the synopsis is: a terrified young man decides his life would be more meaningful as a serial killer. He terrorizes the city of LA, sinking deeper into madness while trying to find meaning in the meaningless. So like I said, Rain Dance Film Festival where I saw this. Because I wasn't able to attend in person, so I was able to get the link. The title here was one that I kept messing up because it is so unique. The runtime did scare me a bit, but I decided to still, dive in and check this out. Other than that, I came into this one blind. So what I'll end up saying here is that for the most part, we're just kind of following our main character of the killer, who is portrayed by our writer and director here of Rivera. So this is taking a lot of homage from Bret Easton Ellis's American Psycho, because we're really just doing like a strain of consciousness, voiceover narration, and kind of watching as he moves through LA and, kills different kind of important people here that he kind of comes across as whatnot. And this one is also a tough one to talk about. It's truly an experience where you're inside the head of somebody who might be living with a mental disorder. Now, he can be manic and hard to follow. I'll go ahead and just warn you that this is an art house film. It's all about the visuals and the sound design. I can see people who label things as woke would have issues as being too political, but we're also listening to the ravings of a madman. If these things you have issues with, I would avoid this one. But let's go ahead and kind of... What I really like about this is visually this is stunning. Following this lead character where they drive or walk around LA is great. I get the feeling that they filmed hours and hours of footage. They then looked through it, edited things to fit what the lead character was saying. I'm also guessing that certain things were doctored but still work. We also have things that are surreal. I'll include here that the killer early on was talking about... See, this is actually starts at the tail end of the pandemic, I believe. And it's like one of those little, library, box things that would appear in people's neighborhood. He ended up getting a copy of American Psycho out of one of those. So that kind of sets the stage to what we're going to get. And I've actually read the book, and seeing how this started, it clicked what they were doing. I'll just say here that this can be difficult to follow, narrative-wise, just because it is kind of him just kind of going through things. But the cinematography and framing are good. We get mostly practical effects. There are some cool things they do with editing to make it even surreal. And then there's also some CGI. If there is that, it fits what they needed and didn't stick out. The sound design and music were good for the atmosphere that they needed. That set up, let's delve a bit more into the story. It is limited. This is somebody who is suffering from depression. It could potentially be somebody who is bipolar or just manic of sorts. They're doubling down that they've relapsed with drugs and alcohol. You couple that with that, they tell us that they were a child star. Now, I was curious if that was true, but his sister in this, who's portrayed by Brianna Wagner, she does confirm this. I get the idea that our killer never hit it big outside of commercials, but they were successful enough. So they could be hiding a history of sexual abuse from their agent, and that agent is Frederick, portrayed by Weiss, who I'll kind of get into who he is if you don't pick up the name immediately. But we don't fully know if our main character was abused or not, or if this is a delusion that they've come up with, because this is something that has happened quite a bit with child actors. by the point that it gets revealed, we don't know what's reality and fantasy, as those lines have been blurred. I'll credit Rivera here on taking on this role of a madman. As the writer and director, he does have a unique insight into what they wanted to do. Let's then finish out with discussing the rest of the acting. Didn't click who Freddy was until writing the review, but he is Goldberg from the Mighty Ducks films and Josh from Heavyweights. I know he had issues with addiction and being a recovering child star. I do wonder what input he had here, because I would guess that he could share some of that. I'm glad to see him acting in this. Wagner was good as a sister. I also like Carolyn Mitchell, who is the final girl. That's what her character name is credited. And she does some stuff here in the final act that really kind of brings things to light and everything. Also credit to other victims here like Brigitte Comeau, Alan Anthony Smith, Sabina Francesca. I also want to give credit here to Sebastian Davis as Cartnark. His little vignette that he has with our main character was pretty hilarious. Josh Stone as Tommy Vercetti. Yes, that is an homage to Grand Theft Auto. And Cheyenne Taylor as House Arrest Girl. They all were given a bit more to work with and flesh out their characters that added some comedy and depth to this film. So there isn't much more that I can go into here. So in conclusion, this film won't be for everybody. This is a wild and surreal romp where we are following a mentally disturbed man played by Rivera. The ravings of this madman have things that I agree with, but they're also contradictory at times. He's also a gatekeeper when he makes you look at people and how they respond to certain things that have fandom. It makes for an interesting commentary, whatever you take, or however you take it. The rest of the cast were solid to push the killer to where he ends up. The ending is something that I haven't brought up, but I rather enjoyed its meaning. Visually, this movie is stunning. Credit to the cinematography, framing, and the effects used. Soundtrack and design add to this as well. Again, won't be for everybody, but if you want to see a surreal take on a narrative style of something like American Psycho, this is one that you can go along on a ride for. So my rating here for Deformelody and American Nightmare is going to be a 7 out of 10. And my last actual feature is going to be Butcher's Bluff. This is technically from 2023. It got its wide release here this year. This is co-directed between William Instone and Matt Rifley. Now, this was written by Instone and Renfield Rasputin. This is starring, I don't like how they have the more popular cast here, but this has starring Michael Fisher, Paige Steakley, and Instone. And then we're also featuring cameos here by Jeremy London and Bill Oberst Jr. Now, this is a slasher horror film that is from the United States, currently sitting on a 5.5 on IMDb, and not enough ratings on Letterboxd, but I'd say about a 2 to a 3-star movie over there, with our synopsis being: 4 film students investigating the Hogman legend in Emerald Falls discovers the mass killer may be real. As they uncover the town's dark past, they must solve the mystery before becoming the next victims of his brutal force. So for this one here, if you'd like to hear a featured review on this one, or actually not a feature, I did a mini review on this one over on episode 280, which this one was my St. Patrick's Day episode number 6 that featured Leprechaun Origins and Dark Match as the featured reviews over there. But for this one here, if I would say, here's kind of my thoughts, as I've already covered this one as that mini review. We have a group of students who are doing a documentary about the legendary killer, the Hogman, and that person is portrayed by Instone. Now, Michael Fisher is doing this along with Paige Steakley, and there's another guy here that I want to make sure that I get. Derek, portrayed by Johnny Huang. Now, they're going up to where this guy is, and they're going with Rogers, I think it's his cousin, or maybe it's his buddy, of Bobby, portrayed by Dakota Millett. And then they're also going up there with some friends so they can party with Samantha, portrayed by Samantha Holland, Tina by Kayla Anderson, and Jake by Santiago Sky. So I like how this pays homage to things like Friday the 13th, The Burning, type of movies like that. Not all of our characters are likable, but they are distinct, and we get, like I said, some cameo here by veterans. I didn't even include this. Brink Stevens is in this, Oberst Jr., and I thought Michael's performance as Roger, that was a standout. He was my favorite. I mean, I might probably be a little bit biased because he does kind of hang out in some of the horror podcast groups that I'm also a part of. I do think this is well made. The cinematography captures the setting and how brutal the practical effects are done. I like the pig mask for our killer here. That's a fun little detail. He uses a wide array of weapons that you'd find out in this area. There's a lot of characters here for cannon fodder. That's another good thing. My biggest gripe, though, is the runtime. It just goes too long, and I think it bogs down the pacing a bit. I think if you trim this to it's over 2 hours. If you get it down to about an hour and 45, and if you can get it down to an hour or 90 minutes, that'd be the perfect runtime. And I don't love if you're going to go this long that you're setting up a potential sequel. Overall, though, I'd say if you're a slasher fan, this is a solid homage to ones from the 80s, offering a good array of brutal kills and effective practical effects. Despite its long length, it's worth a watch in my opinion, and my rating stayed pat here, as both times now I've given it a 7 out of 10. Then I have a doc here of Scary Stories from 2018. This is directed by Cody Merrick, and then it features archive stuff from Elvin Schwartz, and we get to see R.L. Stein, and then Peter Schwartz, who is the son to Elvin. So this is a documentary about those books that came out back in the day. I'll get more into that here shortly, but this is from the United States, currently sitting on a 6.1 on IMDb and a 2.8 on Letterboxd, with our synopsis being a documentary about the children's horror classic stories, scary stories to tell in the dark. It includes the author's family, scholars, folklorists, artists, and children's books authors such as R.L. Stine, Q.L. Pierce, and more. So this is one that I actually debated a few years ago when I was living closer to the Gateway Film Center. It would have been around like 2018, 2019, around there. The title caught my attention because when I looked at it, I realized this was about the series of books that I used to read growing up. When I was also streaming on Tubi, I decided to put this one on late in my workday, treating it like a podcast. So I listened and looking down to see if there was something particularly interesting. What this does well is helping you get to know the author of Alvin Schwartz. He has passed away, so he wasn't available, which is a bummer. What I liked here, though, is that they interviewed his son, Peter. It sounds like they were estranged for a good stretch. This almost seems like a cathartic thing for Peter, helping him connect better with his father's lasting legacy. Something else that I like is that this explores both sides of the impacts of these books. There is one side asking people who have been influenced to make their own art, whether it is songs influenced by it, sculptures, paintings, even tattoos. There's another side of this, though, of parents wanting these books to be removed from libraries. So they actually focus more on one lady who is part of a PTA who is leading the charge, I believe in Seattle. She actually participates quite a bit in this, going as far as meeting Peter. That felt a little bit odd, I'll admit, especially since I don't think she ever really got her lasting question resolved about whether Alvin thought this book was appropriate for like children's libraries, especially ones in like elementary schools. So I'm not in favor of banning things. My parents took the stance that they would police what I watched. Didn't always do the greatest job there, but I digress. But they didn't keep most stuff from me, knowing that if they did, I would more likely find a way to watch it even more, so they kind of just let things be afforded to me. I can see why they wanted to ban these books. Many didn't want them outright. They're just not in elementary school libraries. That had a heartfelt moment where a father whose daughter read these was excited that she showed interest in reading books because he wanted her to develop her education more, because he was a hardworking individual, which nothing completely wrong with that, but he wanted his daughter to do something better than that. And it's one of those things, like, it kind of made me tear up as a father myself. So there's something to be said about finding something that interests and inspires. I'll then end this out by saying that this is made well enough. I can see the arguments here that it is a bit all over the place. It tries to jump between subjects instead of fleshing one out aspect and then go to the next. This does work better when dealing with a fictional narrative. It wasn't bad listening to this while working. I will admit that for me, learning more about the books and their lasting legacy and their cultural impact, because these actually came out before I was even able to read and everything like that, so I didn't realize that. To me, I thought these came out in like the mid-90s, but once again, digress there. This was a solid enough documentary, though. I will kind of my lasting thing there. So my rating here for Scary Stories is going to be a 6.5 out of 10. And something I'm going to start checking out here while I'm working is going to be Horror's Greatest. This is a series over on Shudder. Now, I watched episode 1, which was Tropes and Cliches. This one is directed by Kurt Sagan, and then it features like Joe Hill, Bria Grant, and Alex Winter. This is a documentary horror episode that is, I'm assuming, from the United States here. This is a 7.4 on IMDb, and they don't have a letterbox page for it, but this one has creepy houses, killer rednecks, final girls. Horror films often rely on well-worn storytelling devices. Audiences come to expect them. What are the most common genre tropes and cliches? How do modern filmmakers subvert them? So I was actually reading some of the comments. I don't know how deep people were into the show before they started to kind of complain, but I decided to check this out just to kind of see how it would work. It seemed mostly like watching a podcast for me, so I went with that decision. The title caught my attention and wanted to see how deep they would go into some of these things. So we get a great group of people here. We get like the horror author Hill, we get actors and directors like Grant, Winter, Tom Holland, Emily Marsh, David Dastmalchian, Ted Geoghegan. We have film scholars and critics here like Nathaniel Thompson, Dave Schilling, Rebecca McKendry, and Rodney Barnes. So there's just a wealth of knowledge to provide, I should say. So for the first episode, they're running through the different tropes and cliches that we get in the horror genre, like that synopsis said. There are 11 of them that they use here for just giving different examples. This was fun to listen to. Since it kind of runs just under an hour, they don't go too in-depth, but each one does get its own little section. They will give like a movie that might have really put this on the map, and then they'll kind of give like a newer ones that might subvert that, and just kind of showing how these different things might have been used at different times, like when they first started becoming tropes, how they kind of became that way. But fun to listen to, like I said, and to be honest, you could just pick one and do a whole show on the different cliches. I'm kind of curious to see where we go for the next one, which I'm almost done with that at the time of recording this, so it might end up being here in a few minutes if that's how it is, just kind of how my recording schedule is. But I thought this first one kind of did some good things, and I gave it an 8 out of 10. And I also got to check out episode 2, which was Giant Monsters, that features the likes of Steve Niles, Michael Daughtry, and Neville Page. This one, the synopsis is nearly a century after King Kong ran amok, giant marauding monsters continue to enthrall us. Godzilla is hotter than ever. Filmmakers like Bong Joon-ho, J.J. Abrams, and Jordan Peele have all added their unique spins to the genre. So this one is one that not everybody considers to be horror, at least for some of these ones. So I was actually like to hear from filmmakers who are in the genre like Daughtry, Page, Ryuhei Kitamura, and Jordan Vogt Roberts, as well as those who are just terrified by the things they saw in these movies. Going along with that, I do like to include here film scholars and critics like Dave Schilling, Tracy Salisbury, Todd Kazuhi Maki, and Tava. I'm gonna mispronounce his name so badly, and I feel so bad because she is so intelligent. Tananarive to help scratch under the surface just even a bit more. There are things here that were brought up that I wouldn't even necessarily consider directly, but they make so much sense for kaiju films. So there's things that were brought up here that I will definitely incorporate different aspects into arguments that I make about giant monster movies to be horror. Now, I know there's a lot of the stuff that kind of just falls into it anyways, but the more whimsical ones are still borderline. The darker ones for sure should be considered in the genre. So my rating here for Horror's Greatest, Episode 2, Giant Monsters, is going to be an 8 out of 10. And that's all I have here then for mini reviews, so let me go ahead and get you over the trailer of my first featured review.
Y ya cuando el internista ha puesto en nuestras manos de cirujano al enfermo, tendremos la ocasión de localizar el punto doloroso. Como todos sabemos, en la apendicitis ese punto puede ser variable en posición, aunque el más frecuente de todos sea el llamado de McBurney, que se encuentra a la mitad de la distancia que separa esta región de la espina ilíaca antero superior, y pasando ya el acto operatorio con el enfermo en posición. Y una vez hecha la esterilización de la fosa ilíaca, procedemos a incidir esta piel con el bisturí. Sabemos que en la fosa ilíaca izquierda se encuentra el colon, donde pondremos a encontrar implantado el apéndice que vamos a extirpar.
Con la fosa ilíaca izquierda, ¿eh?
¡Qué bárbaro! Fíjate, Molina, que dice Gutiérrez que la operación del apéndice se hace sobre la fosa ilíaca izquierda. Oye, Molina, ¿qué no podría darse un caso así?
No, hombre, no, solo en algún fenómeno. Mira, fíjate, el apéndice se encuentra en la fosa ilíaca derecha. Después de hacer la incisión de la piel y tejidos subyacentes, del corte de la aponeurosis y separación del músculo recto anterior, se procede al corte del peritoneo, siguiendo el proceso operatorio acostumbrado, quedando así a la vista las asas intestinales. Sobre el ciego encontraremos implantado el apéndice, y después de colocar las pinzas de Kocher en la forma debida, se logra la separación del apéndice por medio del cauterio, sin peligro de infectar la cavidad peritonal. Después de hacer el sujete y la peritonización, se procede a hacer la sutura por planos como en toda operación de vientre. ¿Te has enterado, Gutiérrez?
And my first feature review for this week is going to be The Dead Speak. This goes by the original title of Los Muertos Hablan. This is from 1935. It was directed by Gabriel Soria, And then for the writers here, I believe it's Emmanuel Fernandez and Soria did the adaptation where the novel was written by Pedro Zappian, something like that. Now this stars Julian Solar, Amelia de Iglesias, Manuel Noriega, while also featuring the likes here of Miguel Arenas, Aurora Cortez, Isidro de Olatz, Jorge Mondragon, Jose Eduardo Perez, Gofredo de Velasco, Ricardo Carti, Manuel Buendia, Felipe de Flores, Gilberto Gonzalez, Lenore de Martorell, Paco Martinez, and David Valle Gonzalez. So this is a drama, horror, mystery, sci-fi film that is from Mexico. It is currently sitting on a 5.9 on IMDb and a, not enough ratings on Letterboxd, but I'd say about a 3 to, between like a 2.5 and a 3.5 star movie over there, with the synopsis being: a medical student and his professor invent a machine capable of seeing the last image in the retina of a dying man's eyes. In this way, the two help the police solve a complex homicide that threatened to go unsolved. So it's a film that I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to see. I don't recall if there was an available streaming link. I do, or like available stream out there somewhere. I do know I saw somebody on Letterboxd say that if you search the movie by its original title, you can find one. But being this is from Mexico, I needed subtitles. I was able to find this one on the DVD Ladies website, so I picked up a copy. This is another one where the subtitles weren't great, but I was able to get the gist of what was happening. So outside of what I've kind of given here, I did come into this one blind outside of that. And let's do some feature notes first. I'll start with the director of Soria. He has helmed 11 films, and this is the first work of his that I've seen. His only foray into the genre as well. Now, he has an assistant director here of Roberto Galvedon, who did this role in 7 works. First I've seen, only one in horror. Soria also co-wrote this. He did this twice. First that I've seen, only one he worked in genre. Then De Fernandez, who helped with the writing. He has 33 features. First that I've seen, only one that was a horror film. Then the final writer here of the original novel is Zappian, and this is their only credit. Then to look at the cast, I'll begin with Solar. He was in 32 movies. First that I've seen, only one that he's done in genre. His co-star of De Iglesias has only, this is their only credit here, so their only feature film. Then to finally change it up is going to be Noriega. He's been in 70 films. I've seen him in 3 works. He was also in last week's Mystery of the Ghastly Face. So I'm at 4% overall. Letterboxd doesn't consider Two Monks in genre. I've also seen that. He has 3 in horror with this and last week's film. The only one that I haven't seen as of yet is The Macabre Trunk from 1936. So over this one here, we start off seeing the outside of a building before shifting inside to see Eduardo Molina, portrayed by Solar, writing a letter to his girlfriend, Marta del Castillo, portrayed by De Iglesias. Now, he then goes into another room where there's a bunch of guys that he goes to school with. They're having a debate about experiments. What we'll learn is that they're getting fed up with their professor, Jimenez, portrayed by Noriega, going as far as to walking out on one of his lectures due to what they consider to be wild beliefs. Now, Marta has delivered this letter by her maid, Donchella Maria, portrayed by Cortez. Now, the reason is that her father is strict, Ricardo, portrayed by Arenas. We see later that he catches the maid and ends up scolding his daughter for conversing with this guy and then demanding that she never see Eduardo again. Then shifting over to the synopsis of what is happening here, Eduardo is the only student who believes in Professor Jimenez. Along with Simon, portrayed by De Oles, they need to find subjects for their experiments. Now, they believe that when somebody dies, the last image they have imprinted on their retinas can be reproduced. So they create a machine, and I believe a solution in order to get that image. Simon is able to get the heads up when there is a body from the hospital switchboard operator. So, like, obviously when they're sending, like, an ambulance or they're going to collect one. But now our duo here shows up before that and in their own ambulance to seal the body for these experiments. So this draws the attention of Commandant Garcia, portrayed by Gonzalez. He sets up a trap to catch whoever's doing this. It leads our duo into it, and then sacrificing their lives in order to prove their theory for science is kind of the dilemma they have to decide if they're going to do, and, you know, kind of the perils that come from it. So let's leave my recap and introduction of the characters. Where I want to start would be that this film has a very similar concept to Dario Argento's 4 Flies on Grey Velvet. It makes me wonder if that horror maestro saw this film at some point. It is interesting that both are using this like pseudoscience. It also pops back up with Wild Wild West. Regardless though, both the other 2 films use it more of like a plot point, where this film revolves around it with Professor Jimenez and Eduardo trying to prove it. Now, something that is interesting is that Professor Jimenez is mocked by his students. It is to the point where they get up and leave class. I will say here, the subtitles that my copy had weren't great. I'm not sure if there were like religious issues were why they were having their problems, or from what he's suggesting, or they just don't believe that's possible. It is only Eduardo that believes and wants to prove it. Now, the professor saying this in class does get his superiors upset with him. He's not teaching the curriculum. That seems to be their sticking point. And it's also, I guess, like a theory that's not proven yet. It's to the point where they're ready to even let him go. So he's forced to prove what he's trying to do, and that's good to build tension. Another aspect that feels like it's borrowing is from the ideas of Burke and Hare events. In order for them to prove what they're doing, well, with what we see being like the last image burned on their retinas and that it can be reproduced, they need recently dead bodies. I get the idea that because of the nature of their experience, nobody is going to allow them to do this. They are then committing crimes in the nature of science by stealing bodies. It is against the law nonetheless. This does make them gray characters. I also can't fault the police as they don't know why the bodies are being taken, so they're trying to put a stop to that. This makes for an interesting story to tell. We then that should be enough for the story, so let's go over to discuss filmmaking aspects. Where I'll start is that by stating that if this was made today, it wouldn't be a horror film. It is dark in nature. There are elements of mad scientists with the experiments, but Professor Jimenez is doing that to help. Body snatching is adjacent, so that keeps it in it for me at least. I'll also say that cinematography and framing were fine. It is still early into cinema, so the technology does limit it. Other than that, the soundtrack was fine without necessarily standing out. It kind of just fit for what was needed. All that's left then would be the acting performance. I'll go ahead and say that Noriega works in his performance here as this professor who is breaking the law to prove his theory. I like that Solar is a student that is thinking for himself, wanting to help. Alisa isn't given much to work with, except being the kind of a love interest for Eduardo. Now, she does add stakes, though, her father won't let them be together. Now, the experiments put it even more into jeopardy as well, so there is also that. Dioles works in this smaller role as the helper. Gonzalez and the police also built tension there as well. The acting was fine across the board. In conclusion, I went a bit shorter in my recap and due to not having great subtitles, but this is another interesting mad scientist film from Mexico. It is interesting that this borrows elements from Burke and Hare, as well as using this idea that they will be repeated over the years. The acting was fine. Solar and Noriega led the way with the rest of the cast, directed them to where they end up. Filmmaking aspects were solid as well. Cinematography and framing were fine for the era. Not one that I could recommend to everybody. If you can read Spanish, then I think you'll enjoy this one more. One that I'd say that if you want to do a bit deeper dive for this year or the era, this would be one that I would probably say to try to, seek out. Or like I said, if you can speak Spanish, that makes it even easier. So my rating then for The Dead Speak is going to be a 6 out of 10. So I'm not going to do a spoiler section. There's not anything really more that I wanted to delve into there that I need to do. So let me go ahead and get you over the trailer of my second featured review.
This is what I wanted to show you. Isn't it cool?
Yeah, it is really cool. Where'd you get it from?
I'm OG Kettle Springs, baby. I got all kinds of stuff.
Does it work?
Try it.
Look out!
They're really big on tradition around here.
Every year, there's this parade where everyone gathers around a Friendo float.
Friendo?
It's the clown on all the Bay Pen corn syrup labels. He's practically a local legend.
Smile, Philly girl. You're about to become a sensation.
Be careful who you hang out with. There's some real weirdos at this town.
Yeah, 6. Yeah, very funny, man.
Hey, Ginger! You okay?
There's a psycho dressed up like Friendo, trying to kill us! Call 911!
Where's the button, Jen? What is this? What
kind of phone is this?
And for my second featured review is going to be Clown in a Cornfield. This is from 2025, directed by Eli Craig, who also co-wrote the screenplay with Carter Blanchard. And then Adam Cesar is the one that wrote the original source material. This stars Katie Douglas, Aaron Abrams, and Carson McCormick. We'll also feature in here the likes of Vincent Moeller, Kevin Duran, Will Sasso, Cassandra Potenza, Verity Marks, Ao Slolanki, Alexander Martin Deacon, Catherine Rearford, Dana Leitold, Jean-Jacques Javier, Noah Craig, Heath Vermette, Bradley Swatsky, Jeff Strom, and Dylan McEwen. So this is a dark comedy, slasher, teen, horror, mystery, thriller film that is from a co-production of the United States, Luxembourg, United Kingdom, and Canada. This is currently sitting on a 5.8 on IMDb and a 2.7 on Letterboxd, or synopsis being. A fading Midwestern town in which Frendo the Clown, a symbol of bygone success, reemerges as a terrifying scourge. So this is a film that I wanted to see when it hit theaters. Due to the birth of my son, I have been limited on my time to get out, so I ended up just waiting until this hit VOD. I heard that most people enjoyed this, at least to an extent. So there are also some problems I saw people were having with it, so I was able to avoid spoilers, just learning that this is based on a novel written by Cesar. So then, actually, let's go ahead and run through some of these featured notes here for some of the key people, and I will start off with the top here with our director of Craig. He's handled this role for 3 features and 1 short. What actually kind of shocked me is that he's the director of Tucker and Dale vs. Evil, which I'm a big fan of since my family video days. His other film that I haven't seen as of yet is also a horror one called Little Evil. So we also have an assistant director here of Douglas Mitchell. He's handled this for 6 films. I've seen 3. Everything that I've seen of his has been in horror, with this, Curse, and Cult of Chucky. I have not seen his final horror film yet, Winter, from 2018. So then to the writing room, Craig co-wrote the screenplay. He's done this for the same works that he's directed. Blanchard is the other writer. He's done this for 2 films. This is the only one that I've seen and that he's done in the genre. And then obviously the original writer of the novel is Cesar. This is the only adaptation so far of his work. Moving then to our cast here, and starting with Douglas, I thought she looked familiar as I saw her in the film Level 16. She's been in 13 movies and 2 shorts. This is her only work in horror so far, she has an upcoming project of The Rule of 3. Then our co-star of Abrams has been in 36 motion pictures and 9 shorts. I've seen 4 of his stuff. Not horror, he was in Cinderella Man. In genre, he's done 6, and I've seen 3. This would include Resident Evil Apocalypse, this, and Open House. I have not seen Regression, 388 Arletta Avenue, or From Jennifer. Then to look at McCormick, he's been in 11 features and 2 shorts. I've seen 2. The other one that is not horror was Shazam, and has 3 in the genre. I've not seen Zombie at 17 or This Is Not a Test, which that second one there is not completed yet. I also want to give credit here to a couple other names that I recognize a lot here, and that would be first crediting Sasso, who's been in 52 films and 3 shorts. I've seen 8 of his things. Not horror, he was actually in Happy Gilmore, Drop Dead Gorgeous, and Best in Show. Also, I know him from Mad TV and Modern Family. He has 3 in genre, though. I have not seen Dangerous Game, The Legacy Murders, or Night of the Animated Dead. And last is going to be Durand, who I've seen 6 of his 49 films. He has 2 shorts as well. Not horror, he was in X-Men Origins, Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me, and the 3:10 to Yuma remake. Now, he was also in The Butterfly Effect, which I think that's borderline horror, has 9 in the genre officially. I've seen 5 for 55%. I've seen Abigail, Resident Evil Retribution, This, Legion, and Tragedy Girls. I have not seen Dark Was the Night or The Echo. He has 2 upcoming projects, as he's supposed to be in the Ready or Not sequel, and another movie called, I think it's Ithacoa? Might be how you say that one. Not really positive there. But anyways, let's jump into this movie here, though. Our events start back in 1991. We're at a party outside of a barn and by a cornfield. We see a guy pull out a joint. He offers it to a girl. She heads out into the corn, waiting for him to join her. They then find a Jack-in-the-Box toy before being killed by somebody in a clown suit. We then shift to the present day. Quinn Maybrook, portrayed by Douglas, is moving to Kettle Springs with her father, Dr. Glenn, portrayed by Abrams. I'll include here that her mother and his wife passed away from an overdose. They're struggling in their own ways. Dr. Glenn wanted to change, so he's moving to be a family doctor here in this small town, as he couldn't work in the emergency room anymore, as they are leaving Philadelphia. Upon arriving, they settle in. Quinn meets their neighbor, Rustin Vance, portrayed by Mueller. He offers to walk her to school. It is here that we end up meeting the popular kids. They're led by Cole Hill, portrayed by McCormick. His family is a legacy since his great-grandfather founded a company, pretty much his town as well, and that company is Baypen, that made corn syrup. His father, Arthur, who is portrayed by Durand, is the mayor. Cole hangs out with Tucker Lee, portrayed by Slolanki. Ronnie Queen, portrayed by Marks. Janet Murray, portrayed by Potenza. And Matt by Deacon. Now, I'll say here that Tucker's black, Janet is a mean girl, and Ronnie is seeing Matt, who is a jock. Now, this group is seen as troublemakers. They're making Friendo, who was the mascot for Baypin, into a scary figure. They put out videos online where they're like killing their friends off in different ways, making it look like horror movies, but they're trying to like stage them like they're real. After one of the videos, the mill burned down, putting most of the town out of work. This has Sheriff Dunn, portrayed by Sasso, Mr. Vern, portrayed by Sawatsky, and the other older generation, pretty much in general, being hard on them. What doesn't help is that Friendo might be real. The group of friends are targeted, finding a jack-in-the-box before they're attacked by this killer clown. Quinn starts to get into trouble by associating with his crew to the point where her father doesn't want her to hang around with them anymore. Even more so when she becomes a target of this killer. The truth of Friendo and what has happened in this town is just ramping up. It also seems to be history here. Let's leave my recap of the characters. What I want to start is that this is a decent update to a 1980s slasher film. There is something that I won't spoil that purists would cause them to either not like this or make them not consider this into the subgenre. At the heart of this, I do love that we have this small town, the local economy is struggling, and you have these modern teens that cause friction with the older citizens. There are elements that we saw in films from this genre in the past with like a modern take to it, plus having our killer dressed as a clown is a good move as well. So now that that's set up, let's delve into our group of teens who are the focus. This felt similar to me to something like Children of the Corn 2. It is different since Glenn is moving here to be the local doctor. He wants to get away from Philadelphia due to the trauma of losing his wife. It sounds like he asked Quinn but he didn't truly ask her. She saw he was hurting, so she agreed. Now that they're here and he's given her boundaries, she's frustrated. Now she's trying to make the best of the situation, but it is limited. She liked Rust, but he's kind of a quiet farmer-hunter type guy. That's not her speed. This popular group is easier to fit in with, but it also comes with trouble due to what is believed that they did in the destruction of the local corn syrup plant. I do like that she's put herself on the outside being friendly with them by the local citizens. Then delve more to that group. They're interesting. Cole is a legacy since he is the descendant of the founder. His dad is also the mayor. That actually makes him the prime target of Sheriff Dunn. Now, Arthur seems to be annoyed by his son as well, but their on-screen interaction is limited. I do think that's kind of a drawback there. The rest of the group are just kind of interesting cross-section of stock characters. It would make sense that you have a jock and the blonde jerk. Then you have the almost token black kid with them along with Ronnie. What I love is that they're making these horror videos online. Their special effects look great. Something I need to include here is that the anti-woke crowd are having issues here with a storyline featuring Cole and Rust. I could see that coming. Not necessarily those two, but there are things that are alluded to. I'm not fully shocked they went there, especially with a scene where Cole rejects Quinn. I thought this was done to help bring in a bit of comedy. That did make me laugh, and I mean, having that representation is fine, so I'll just kind of leave that there. Where I should go is this town is interesting because I was born in a small city. We moved to live in the country when I was in late elementary school. Now, where I went feels like Kettle Springs. Everybody knew everybody's business just in a couple of days. I like this idea that the popular kids are hated since they're accused of burning down the plant and putting half the town out of work. There is a reveal, though, that doesn't make complete sense. Since I'm avoiding spoilers, it makes me wonder who knows about a certain plan and who didn't. That makes the anger misguided, as well as certain participation. I'll leave that there as I don't want to share anything more than that. The last thing would be this idea of the boy who cried wolf angle. I love that this group of teens are making scary friendo videos. That makes sense when the deaths are happening that nobody believes. It even makes for a funny scene where Janet believes they're being pranked by missing friends. It takes Quinn checking on a character before the terror sets in. That's a good touch. So that should be enough for the story. So let's shift over to the acting. I thought that Douglas was good as our lead. She's this big city outsider coming to a small town. She has a good personality, so she integrates well. This is just Janet, who is rude to her, plus not knowing a secret about Cole. I thought she played well with Abrams, who is her dad in the movie, of Glenn. The teen angst rebellion felt real enough. She's pushing boundaries with work. I do like Glenn more as we start to see that she's telling him could be true, since he's also an outsider. McCormick, Potenza, Marks, McCoon, Deacon, and Muller, along with the rest of the teens' work, they make for distinct enough characters, which is what you kind of need here. I also like Swatoski, the rest of the adults. This is great to also have Sasso and Durand here as well, as I'm a fan of both of those actors, so that's always a plus there. all the stuff that would be what I judge kind of for slasher films, and that would be the kills. It takes me to filmmaking. I thought that this did well enough in bringing the small town feel to life. The cinematography and framing capture that. Plus, I do love this like farm setting. Utilizing how disorienting cornfields can be are good. I also like using like farm items for kills. We get things like a reaper, pitchfork, bow and arrow, as well as a chainsaw. There were some good touches there. They went practical, which was good. There is a bit of CGI here, but not enough to ruin this. I will say that I love the look of the killer being a clown. Frendo has a creepy look. Other than that, the soundtrack fit for what was needed. So there's a little bit of trivia here that I wanted to go into on the IMDb page. Major score for IFC on their biggest opening weekend record with 3.6 million gross, based on the novel Clown in the Cornfield by Cesare. 2 characters in the film are named Russ and Cole, respectively, which is the name of Matthew McConaughey's character in True Detective, albeit spelled is slightly different here as Russ Cole, which he spells it in True Detective with it's Cochle, not Cole how you normally spell it. Opened at number 5 in the box office, surpassed Late Night with the Devil. The song played during the Founders Day bar rave is Wicked and Weird, a 2003 hit by Canadian hip-hop star Buck 65. So in conclusion, I thought this was a decent little modern slasher. We have a great setting representing the dying of a small town America. I like how this factors into the overall story as well. There is a decent cast of characters here that felt real while still, being your normal stock. It does have a bit of social commentary that I didn't feel like it was in your face as some people might think. The acting was solid for what was needed. I thought this was made well enough. The cinematography and framing led the way with the practical effects being good. I could see slasher purists having issues, but I enjoyed my time here. Not great by any stretch. A solid shut-off-your-brain slasher with a little bit more to say. So my rating here for Clown in the Cornfield is going to be a 7 out of 10. Not going to do a spoiler section. Don't necessarily think I need to do anything additional there. So let me go ahead and get you over to one last break before I close out the show. I have a great thing here that I wanted to go ahead and give you an offer for since it fell into my lap and wanted to go ahead and share it with you. I have been given a promo code here for shimmerwoodbeverages.com. These are CBD-infused seltzers that are award-winning. They have been twice recognized by Forbes as the #1 CBD beverage in the United States and the best lower potency option out there. It blends full-spectrum CBD with local Maine fruits and cocktail bitters for bold flavors, crafted without added sugars, caffeine, or artificial ingredients, which if you know me, that is something that I prefer because I get enough of the caffeine and I'm trying to get away from sugars. So it's designed for relaxation without intoxicating effects, perfect straight from the can or a refreshing cocktail or mocktail base, depending on what you're looking for there. This has unique flavors like raz lime, chai cherry, ginger orange, and just hemp. Now, Simmerwood offers a health-conscious alternative to sugary sodas or alcohol, made to revive a calm, clear focus for natural stress relief. Each can contains 5 milligrams of full-spectrum CBD for a balancing, calming effect. So this one here is at, like I said, shimmerwood.com, and my promo code here for you listeners is actually you get 30% off of if you use my code, and this is, like I said, a great deal if you can go ahead and you want to do that, and my code is going to be Cinephile1. So if you want to check out more of the information or check out their site, there will be links in the show notes for you to check that out there.
Hey, it's Travis from the Bar Banter Podcast, where friends, drinks, and dumb debates collide. Ever argue, what's the best cereal milk? Or, could you fight 100 duck-sized horses? How about, is Die Hard a Christmas movie? Spoiler alert, we're still fighting about that one. New episodes drop every Wednesday because your midweek needs more chaos. Find us on YouTube, Instagram, and all your favorite podcast apps. Be sure to hit the link tree at _Bar Banter Podcast. And when you do join us, be prepared to grab a drink, take a side, and banter responsibly.
And welcome back one last time here. And just to kind of go through my social medias and stuff, if you'd like to send me an email, you can send that at journeywithacinephile@gmail.com. You can send me any sort of feedback, or if you have any questions or anything, go ahead and shoot them there, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Or if you want to send me any screener links or anything like that, anything podcast related, you can send it via that way. If you'd like to read any of the written reviews, I'll direct you to Reviews of the Dead, and that's horrorreview.webnode.com. If you'd like to become friends with me on Facebook, I'm David Michigan Garrett Jr. On Twitter, I'm Buckeye from Mish. Letterboxd, I'm David OSU. On Instagram, I'm DavidOSU87. On Threads, I'm DavidOSU87. And then Journey with a Cinephile has its own Instagram at Journey with a Cinephile, all one word. Now, all of these ones I will be sharing like my ratings on, whatnot. I know for Letterboxd, all of the reviews are going to be for horror and non-horror alike. Instagram, I will be sharing over there is my different like posters and everything for things that I'm reviewing. My personal account, you might see some personal pictures every now and then if I can remember to take them. And then, kind of same thing for Threads. And then Journey with a Cinephile is going to be more of just kind of posting podcast-related different stuff over there. And I'll also direct you to the Nightclub Discord channel, as I have a little section over there where we have some good conversations. I post all of my reviews and any new podcast episodes or some of the things I'm watching when I actually have time to post that. So keep an eye out over there, and I'll have the link for that and everything else in the show notes there. And then I'm also going to direct you, a way that you can actually listen to the show is going to be through the Pod Nation TV. This is a streaming service and everything like that. There will be a link in the blog posts for all of my episodes, so if you'd like to listen to it that way, it's kind of a cool little thing. You can definitely do that through like Roku TV, and there's some other apps for it as well, just as another way for you to consume this podcast if you decide to. There's also a lot of other great shows that are on that network as well. And for my next episode, I'm going to be doing something a little bit different here. I do it, periodically. Since it's episode 295, I've actually watched all the horror films that I can find from 1925. I'm going to do something different this year and actually just go ahead and make my top horror films of 1925. I think I ended up with, I know there's more than 5. I think it's either 6 or 7 of them. Well, I will know by the time I'm doing I don't have the list in front of me at this moment, but that'll be what I'll do, is run through my top horror films, and I'll discuss the lost films as well. And then my Voyage to the Fives rewatch is going to be Village of the Damned. This is from 1995, the Johnny Carpenter remake that he did. And then my 2025 rewatch is going to be Dark Match. This is one that's over on Shudder. And then I'll also be knocking out a bunch more of those screeners for the Raindance Film Festival. So I don't think there's anything else I need to do here for this outro except say, that wraps up this episode of Journey with a Cinephile, a horror movie podcast. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of horror cinema. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and follow along for more deep dives into the macabre. Until next time, keep watching horror, and remember, fear is just a frame away.
It had been a wonderful evening, and what I needed now to give it the perfect ending